DMs giving up control was the topic I heard. DMs giving up control. And sensitivity readers. You know, I heard Grim Jim, a guy I interviewed recently, do a video on sensitivity readers. I think probably related to something in the tabletop role playing game hobby. And he does a great job in the video, and the points are all accurate. He's not wrong in any sense. Are they looking for issues that might not even be there to justify their position in their job? Of course. And it's easy just to look at that and not relate it back to just politics or something in that vein. Here's what I would say. Here's why I understand the pettiness of that. And a lot of people into the game might be there for financial reasons, right? More about making money than caring about what is said in that way. It's just like it's looking to justify a job that is, well, a well-paying job. You'll be getting paid really well for doing next to nothing. In reality, reading material before everyone else gets to read it and deciding, oh, that sounds a little offensive. I guess I can say it does, and I can come up with all kinds of made up reasons for it. But I look back at politics and I look at the years where we all know censorship was being put out by a certain side of the fence in the aim to help them win political points. That's just quite obvious. Almost everything they censored back when censorship started pushing its way into the system. Like if you were someone on Twitter when it was still Twitter many years ago before they started, you know Twitter was free. Say what you want to say. And then in a short period of time, you start seeing small examples of censorship leading up, and on purpose, the censorship is denied by everyone in authority. Politicians, news media, anyone who has some type of authority in the minds of people were not even mentioning this stuff or making sure it was buried so you wouldn't even think of it. But that's to normalize it. The key, and then they start slowly doing shocking examples of censorship on Twitter. Again, this is to give you a shock, not all at once. Numb you out, get you used to all this censorship going on so they can set a standard. So they can normalize censorship in a way that it was not normalized beforehand. So the less you spoke up, the less people got really angry about censorship going on, the more it became normalized. And by the time more people would notice, it would be well established. And I think they played that game really well. Basically, when people like me early on were saying, hey, they're censoring here, that's really bad, the majority wouldn't even acknowledge it was happening. They call you crazy, everything else. And I'm like, well, this is the time you need to push back to make sure this doesn't get normalized. If not, if you let it go until you finally notice it creep up and it becomes acceptable to talk about, at that stage, it is too late. Your whatever we call free speech is gone, and censorship will have been normalized, and they'll still be trying to push it quite hard. And they'll normalize it so much, people on our side of the fence will use it in a lighter form to act like they're offering freedom. You see that on X now with shadow banning, stuff like that, which is a form of censorship, but it's a light form. We don't really count it. So somehow the guy still pushing censorship is also fighting for free speech. And there's no doubt you can say a lot of things on X now that you couldn't just say on Twitter even a few years ago, and that definitely evens a playing field a little bit, right? Just a little bit. But that's what happened. In my opinion, without that happening, without that period of time where that becomes normalized, sensitivity readers today would not be a thing. even if the people in it might only be in it for money or for some alternative scam at this stage, right? There'd be no foot in the door if it wasn't for normalizing censorship for the point of scoring a political victory, right? And that's pretty much what it ties to. Without one, you can't have the other. That's where we're at, right? So I go, you know what? If you attack the normalization of censorship instead of ignoring the topic and focusing on the money scam, like if you focus on the money scam, you're not really going to the core issue, which is if you're ever going to reverse censorship as we know it, the very basic starting point where the ground starts, which is still leaning in towards politics, and it is done for ideology reasons, stuff like this. And on the end of that, there's a lot of scam and money going on. Of course, there's a bigger game to the whole thing. It's a pyramid. There's no doubt. But the pyramid does have a body that needs to exist to hold up everything else. And I think it's back at that starting point. If politics is still leaning into it, if the media still leans into it, if Hollywood still leans into it, even if it's every so often at this stage, it holds something up and like into an ideology or a certain side of the fence. It will hold certain things up, and to protect what they're holding up, censorship continues. And even the pressure for people that do not side with them to censor certain things is still present as we move forward. And it would never have been acceptable 15 years ago for any group to be calling for censorship. That would be, oh my, you're against free speech. And it used to be that free speech was a very left-leaning priority. So the idea that you would have that side of the fence ever side with you in support of a form of censorship, or even helping the news media and government deny that it's happening instead of accepting what they see, they accepted what they see. It was a big turnaround on the issue, and that's, I'm not trying to lean into politics too much, but that's how you get from point A to point B there. You just can't get around it. You can intellectually pick apart exactly what you're saying, and I totally get it. And there's not, and Grim Jim was not wrong with his take on the situation, but at the same time, it's just because he's not wrong. It's taking a piece out of a bigger picture. And the bigger picture tells you where the problem is and where all this other stuff, its position in our world would become weaker if we were to go after the people that normalize it, the politicians over the speech. Continued pressure on the news media, extreme pressure on Hollywood, or any form of wherever they have an effect on a portion of the population's mind, right? I don't care. Like, yes, that means cartoons matter. It means anything that communicates information and shares its stuff. That should be done in a very neutral way, without censorship. Like, we allow. Masters giving up control, like DMs. I always try to wonder what they mean by that. Like, I always look at it like the world and the game rules is the agency of the game master. Now, of course, they're trying to master rules, and they have to come at them as they understand them. And then when they want to apply new rules, it's from that mastery understanding they're doing it. Of course, we all have different views of rules and different ways of looking at it, but there is a mastery over those rules that is expected. It's like, if you fail with the dice, you fail with the dice. I would hope no one is arguing to give up that control. Like, the game still functions. Now, is there certain ways game masters can communicate host rules or adjustments before you game with them? I think there's a priority that expectation is there. They communicate any changes or alternatives, to the rules. Outside of that, now you can either accept or move on, right? You can't control the person, and that's agency over the rules. What about the world? Well, you got to think about this. Players have agency over their characters, and it's instead of having control over the entire world, they only do the type of labor work into a game that would consist with what they're getting. They get to control one character. It's a game for them, all focused on them, so they get a lot out of it. But as far as control over something in the world, they get a minimal control over just one character, and that is their character. But yet they only do enough work to really justify even having that much control. And for the person that runs the world, they have to do a mountain of more work for any game they're going to run. And when you're putting something together and you're coming up with ideas, it's like the way a player comes up with ideas for their character. There's an agency you want over something. So there's an ownership of something. It's not owner as in a negative sense. It's where do you put your creative passion, right? Of course, you already have to consider the player's characters and the players into all your plans. So it's not like they don't get sway over the way you think. They do. They get sway over the control of their character, right? And they have complete agency about how that character is painted, who that character is, everything else. And you have to leave that agency alone. There is the character for the game master is going to be the world and what they want to do with it. Now, it's as simple as it is. And I got to say, I leaned, like, over the years, the more control you take away from game masters, as if it's a negative thing, because they might have said no, right? And usually the people making up rules or pushing rules are some of the worst players I've ever encountered in my life. Good players don't seem, they play well. They enjoy the agency and control they have. They enjoy it. It's players that are stepping out of lines that are always the ones that want to control the DM more. Or you run into a terrible game master, and you want to punish the rest of us over that very piss poor experience. I would say that's wrong. And here's something else that happens when you take away agency of the game masters. They start losing what passion they have for the game. And I mean, some of them could be become sort of like game master zombies, where they're just showing up and doing it for a while. But I mean, there's something lost. I remember gaming groups online in person, when they would start saying, give up control, give up control. Every one of these groups lost over half of their fucking game masters or DMs or whatever you want to call them within a year of really pushing these ideas of give up control. Well, you're going to lose a lot of people. And I find that's one thing you lose is quality game masters, people that are dedicated to the craft of running games. Not forever game masters. I mean, the guys who dedicate themselves, like somebody like myself, right? You don't get that when a game master like me is told that somehow my agency over the world and what I want to present to you, that is me having too much control. Because I might say no to your idea for a character. It's not too much control. And you're lying. That's it. Good evening, Bill. It's Bill. Don't get it wrong. I think there's abusive, idiot game masters out there. I think me and you would both understand that to be a truth. It's not like people don't have a bad experience. It's not like there's not some really fucking terrible people out there. What you do is you hope players. I think you would get this, Bill, too. Is it's just so they don't put chains around the rest of us that do not abuse the stuff. Don't take a bad DM as a justified reason to make up a rule that controls all game masters. Because to me, the guy's an ass to begin with, and the freedom has just showed you this. Well, you think you put rules on, he stops being an asshole? Like, I think you would understand this, Bill. Every time you cut one thing off, the same asshole will find something new on purpose. If somebody's crude about something, you're going to see the cruelty or the crudeness show itself quite often. And what you do is, and this is what becomes like a Band-Aid thing. You see this starting with like 3rd edition D&D, but they start trying to Band-Aid this shit up. Like, oh, we'll put a little bit in control here and say that the player should argue with the game master. Like what? To cause arguments, to push back on game master control. So that's a little pushback. What does that do? It drives people away and causes arguments. Well, that's exactly it, Bill. It's 100% it. Like, it's... And here's what a lot of people don't get, which is, me and you've been in the hobby for a long time. The good ones and the great ones require the same freedom that the bad one used to abuse you to begin with something, or did something terrible. So the same freedom that is required to do the nasty thing to you is also required, usually, in most cases, to get the best out of a person who's good at this, right?